Welcome to the Millennium Marriage Podcast,
where we discuss practical tools and insights into the joys and challenges of marriage. Welcome back to the Millennium Marriage Podcast. I'm your host, Jose.
And I'm Latoya.
And we are here with some amazing superhero guests. We just love them so much. They have done so much for us, our marriage, our relationships, our family, everything. They just blessed us in so many ways.
Definitely. So we are excited to share them with you tonight. Our amazing pastors, Pastor Chris and Dana Rue from Word of Life Christian Center. Thank you guys for joining us.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having us.
It's just an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting us. Looking forward to our discussion tonight. So it's not often that you get to talk about potluck meals and church picnics.
Honey, that was the other podcast that we were on. What? This is about marriage.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like food. However,
this is no picnic then, huh?
No, this is gonna be food for the soul.
Here we go.
So thank you for having us, and we really appreciate the fact that you're also taking time to invest in marriages across the world. We really appreciate your heart to see marriages succeed and to do well.
This is a global ministry. It goes out locally and globally. It's global.
Global. That's nice.
Yeah. And so that's why we're a global church, right?
Yeah. That's right.
But hey, seriously, what Pastor Dana said is awesome. You know, there's no school for marriage. Mm-hmm. You know, that you don't get a school. And so hopefully you've had a good one to look at growing up, but even so, it's going to have its own shortcomings. Mm-hmm. And so you're never, I think it's Ecclesiastes that talks about where the axe head is dull, more strength is required, meaning you should always take time to sharpen the blade to be more efficient.
Absolutely.
So that's the same thing that we do with marriage. We take time to make sure that we're growing and keeping the axe head sharp.
Yep.
Absolutely. We always talk about how it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Mm-hmm. You have to pace yourself. You have to take breaks and really step back and see, where you need to evaluate, rework some things. And
we're ever evolving as a couple and as individuals. So
absolutely.
Always good.
So speaking of evolving, if you guys could share a little bit about how you have evolved over the years, a little bit of your origin story, your relationship, where it all began.
Where it all began.
Dun, dun.
It actually began over 26 years ago, because this March we are celebrating 26 years of marriage.
Yes, congratulations.
23rd, 26.
Yes, so 26
nice.
Years of marriage.
I'm proud of you for remembering the number.
Thank you. Actually, it is very true. It seems to be cliche that the guy seems to forget, but normally it's me that is the one that forgets how many years. I forget how old I am too, so that's just part of the course.
I mean,
you're about 25.
I was about to say. Yeah.
Wait a second. The math is all wrong.
Yep.
Well, the Lord it takes us 1,000 years.
There you go.
So
somewhere in the math it makes sense.
Yeah, we were young when we became friends, and I saw him as a hot college guy who loved Jesus, and definitely wanted to have him in my life. And
what do you do with that at church? Hey,
right?
Did you meet that guy? That's a hot college guy.
That's how it was. That I'm going to be straight up honest. I was like, look at that hot guy. And the bonus is he loves Jesus.
Right.
But then I realized how much he loved Jesus, and that became more attractive than any outer appearance ever. So, so many years ago, saw him as a college guy, and had such a huge crush on him, would pray, God, please give me a man just like Chris Rue, because I did not think I could catch this man. And but God shall provide. And he provided exactly who I was asking for. And so he asked me out on a date, and I was shocked. It was February 13th, 1994.
Wow, that's amazing. You remember the date?
Yes. He likes to pinpoint the reason why I remember the date, because the very next day I had.
Yes. And what happened? So our first date, we went and saw, it was a run by fruit. So we saw Mrs. Doubtfire,
yes,
right, in the movie theater. And then we went to Friendly's.
Yeah.
You had the chicken tenders.
Yes.
And I had.
Oh, he remembered what meal you had.
Oh, I had the chicken quesadilla. You were wearing that orange sweater. That
Aren't you glad?
Oh, orange. Yeah, you were right. Goodness. And then I remember your blonde hair and the orange sweater. I was like, what? And of course, I had no self-awareness, or else I wouldn't have been eating quesadillas with salsa and all that.
But that's
Not
okay.
That we didn't kiss on our first date.
You know
No,
what? He was such a gentleman. Honestly, I wasn't used to this. He did not kiss me on the first date, which to me spoke so much about his character that it just impressed me that, hey, why? Let's just understand that we're just starting a friendship here.
Right.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was.
Not to condemn those who have had.
The fact that your dad was the pastor of the church too.
Oh,
that helped.
There were many factors that were in there.
Right.
I was just happy to get home alive.
That is true.
Yep.
So yeah,
then we didn't go out for Valentine's Day because she was out with friends, i.e., second boyfriend. So that all happened.
Yes, I had another date.
Yes.
But who did
Another date.
She's weighing out her options.
Exactly, Latoya. And then, but who did I go back out with on the 15th?
I did. Well, this ring says me. This ring is 26. 26-year-old ring.
You want it.
Boom. So then we dated for 4 months, but after that, we were too immature to sustain the relationship. And we're apart for 6 months and learned, for me, I remember being a big time internalizer. That was hard for you. And I wasn't necessarily the most affectionate person on the outside. Like I didn't think about those things. I had a lot going on inside that never made its way out.
That's right. You needed an ice pick to get that out.
Ooh, wow. Picky. But after 6 months, we started dating again in January 95. And we dated for 9 months. And I proposed to her at a friend's house and tried to video record the whole thing. And the battery died just before the proposal. So we had we had to reenact the proposal for the camera. That was, she had to act shocked again. All this stuff. Very, very, very organic moment, right?
Yeah.
And engaged for 6 months, because at that time, for you being a pastor's daughter, me being involved in the church, all the people working through all that, 6 months was the shortest time frame in which to have an engagement.
And I like to say that my favorite verse at the time was, it's better to marry than burn with passion, because there was a whole lot of passion at that time. And it was like, time is ticking.
Wait a minute, at that time?
Oh, come on, baby.
Air.
Oh, it is still going.
You might want to turn the camera off. Go ahead.
But we weren't married, so it was we need to put a ring on it and come before God, and
yes,
and so there it is.
6 months.
6 months of engagement for us worked beautifully.
Yep,
awesome, a beautiful story, and you talked about initially when you ended up breaking up or separating and coming back together. God is working things for our good, even when we, in that moment, you're probably like, oh, I thought that was it, but I guess not.
Yeah.
But when he has a plan, he will bring it to fruition.
And you got to take time to be honest about stuff going on inside of you. So especially as a Christ follower, taking time to be like, wait, do I need to change?
Right.
I'm sure there's things about her I could be like, she's this, that, whatever, I could point to stuff. Anyone could point, well, their family. And no. Like, you got to take ownership of your life. And you got to ask tough questions. Even if you're not going to get back together with somebody, if someone has some valid comments or insight, then you need to be able to, own that and grow. So
that's awesome. So we're going to jump right into it.
Let's jump.
Yeah, jump. We're going to go with kind of something that we've been talking about a lot, with how our society kind of views marriage in a more of a convenience or financial benefit or anything like that. It's so
watered down, I guess we would say.
Absolutely. And we wanted to get more into what's the biblical foundation and what God really intended marriage to be.
Well, that's a great segue to this moment where, Chris, I'm going to give you the floor in just a moment, because that is a very deep question, and I have heard you articulate it so well. But I
just say that, I'd be like, well, what did I say?
And then I'll try not to interrupt you. But I had this moment when we were doing, some people call it premarital counseling. And we were just meeting with this couple prior to them getting married, just to really help them establish a foundation, understand what they were saying yes to.
First meeting.
And it was our very first meeting. We were going to meet with them maybe 6 times. And so we were at our kitchen table, had to sit down with them. We had might have had some buffalo chicken dip at the time. It was like, okay, this is going to be fun. We're going to talk about marriage. We're going to talk about communication. Oh, no, that's not what Pastor Chris had in mind. No, he wanted to establish first and foremost that marriage is a covenant. And what does that mean? And the conversation became so serious, and his face, he didn't crack a smile, I don't think even once in that conversation. And to me, I'm like, wow, this is heavy. And then after they left, I was like, babe, what was that?
This is one of the first ones we had done together.
For a long time.
Yeah, because in raising kids and everything, that's one of the first when you're really freed up.
That's right.
When I say freed up, where our kids were pretty much, they could function on their own, the home while we had people over. And,
yeah, it was, I was seriously like, I think you might have scared them. That was very intense and serious conversation. And it was just eye-opening to his heart. That is truly, we need to help marriages prepare to honor God and understand that they're saying yes, not just to one another, but to God.
Yeah.
And how to win and how to succeed. And it was in that moment, I just had an even greater appreciation for truly what covenant is.
Sure. Yeah. No. And the reason I had become like that, I told her that night, I said, hon, I have watched too many couples talk about how they love the Lord. Oh, they know. And then we were talking about communication. We're talking about love language, all those stuff. And those things are good and they add value. But if you don't have the crux, if you literally don't have this being God and his heart and how it reflects him to humanity, how he's the strength and he's the binding preeminent factor of marriage and what covenant is, you're going to lose. In fact, you could have that and have nothing else and still win. I think that's the key thing that you often will say, and I say it intentionally, like when it comes to marriage, you don't need one marriage scripture to have a great marriage. You have enough. If you understand what Christ has done and make him the source for everything, then there's no amount of love that you lack, forgiveness that you lack, wisdom that you can't get. You don't need one marriage scripture actually to excel in marriage. Wow. And I think if we just had enough people who knew what it meant for Jesus to go to that cross, carry what it meant for him to rescue us from sin, and who knew how to pick up a cross and follow him, and because today, as you guys shared earlier, marriage has become not about God, has not become about, I consider my spouse higher than myself and look to serve them. It's become all about me. And when I'm not happy and when I'm not getting what I think I deserve, or if I've blessed you, but you haven't blessed me back, well, now I'm going to start changing everything until I get fulfilled. And that's just not simply what it's about. Yeah. But going to your question, Jose, before we go down that road. So just very, very try and keep this as succinct and away from 6 hours as possible. Marriage is a covenant. Marriage is God's creation. It's not man's institution. All right. We have it today in society, but God is the author of marriage. He's the creator of it. And by it, he brings a man and a woman together. So man is made in the image of God. Woman is made in the image of God. But when the two come together, you have the full expression of the image of God. And you have two people who come together, and God says, for this reason shall a man leave his father and mother, be joined together with his wife. The two shall cleave to each other. But it's a covenant. And so let me just give the basis for that, because that's we've made it a contract, but it's a covenant. Meaning this, when God says that if you want to know how I feel and how I relate to you, the most solemn relationship on the planet, the most strongest relationship by which I'll define it, is marriage. And so what covenant is, if you look in the times of the Old Testament, it would be when you have two parties that would come together, and one would have something that the other needed, and the other had something that the other needed. And there was this understanding, for example, if you had a big nation with a big army and a smaller nation that needed protection, but they had women that in their nation that they would say, hey, you can marry our women. In exchange, we'll get your protection, from a military standpoint, if anyone should ever come against us. And so we'll walk in agreement together. And so when this would happen, you'd have, two people that representing, the different nations, and they would take an animal, they would cut that animal in half to cut, which is what covenant means. One piece would be on one side, one piece would be on the other, and then the two would walk through the pieces together. And the understanding is that we stand here with God as our witness, that if either one of us walks away from this agreement, let it be done to us as was done to the animal. Mm-hmm. Right? So there was this understanding of everything that I have now belongs to you, and everything that you have now belongs to me. That's the understanding of this covenant, and God is our witness. And, and just in case you think of walking away, look at that animal, because that'll be done to you. Now, let's give that context a little bit, because when God looks at the issue that unfolds with man and sin entering, God makes a commitment to bring about salvation. He actually makes it in the book of Genesis, that in the fullness of time, I'm going to bring one from the woman, Eve, and he's going to destroy the evil one. He's going to undo. And you're saying, what does it have to do with marriage? Well, everything. And we learn that that's going to come through in Genesis 12, Abraham, and in Genesis 15, God says, let me show you how serious I am about this. And he has Abraham do what I just said. He has him separate 5 animals. 5 in the Bible is the number for grace, meaning a gift that we can't earn. And he says, Abraham, I'm going to bring this salvation to you and your family and the families of the earth. But you sit over there, because if this is dependent upon you, the whole thing's going to fall apart. And so God comes down. The Bible says as a burning torch and flaming oven. It's the pictures of the Father and the Son. And they both walk through the pieces together, saying, we commit, according to us, we're going to complete everything that's necessary to bring salvation to man. And Jesus walks through those pieces, knowing that as he looks at those pieces, it's going to be done to him, as was done to those animals, in order to bring actually salvation about. So a lot of that is, it seems like extra information. How does it make sense? That's the issue. That in a husband and wife is the picture of the salvation that God brings to mankind. And so when we get married today with Jesus at the center of our marriage, our understanding is that we stand before him who is risen from the dead. And we're not walking between 2 animal pieces, but we're walking in light of that cross on which he died and that resurrection, saying, I commit and open my life to you. Everything that I am belongs to you, the good, the bad, the ugly. And everything that you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, belongs to me. And both of us are standing. And just like they looked at the animal back then and said, let this be a reminder that neither of us will walk away from this, we all look at Jesus and say, because of what was done to him, we have everything we need for this marriage. We have the love, we have the grace, we have the forgiveness, we have the strength. And because it was done to him, our covenant can stand the test of time. And so that's part of it's a longer answer to your question, but it's necessary to walk through some of those dynamics, because it brings the picture of holiness. It brings the picture of God expressing his heart into man. And that's why on your marriage day, they say, well, why can't we just live together? No, because on your marriage day, the two of you stand and you make a commitment, not just before witnesses, but you're invoking God in your relationship in a way that he has never been on it previously. You could have the best engagement in the world. It is not the same when you say, I stand before you and I covenant, and you're putting the ring on the fingers, making that commitment. You're invoking him in a way. He now is the backbone of your marriage. It is a covenant, and he is the strength and the source of it. And he's going to work in that marriage to reflect himself to the world.
Man.
And it is truly why when Jesus was asked, about divorce in the New Testament, why he specifically said, God hates divorce, because to divorce is to break a covenant and break that not only with your spouse, but with God. And God so sees covenant as a picture of who he is. And to have a divorce is to really diminish that picture of how he believes and thinks about us.
Yeah. And it's always important for us as pastors to put an asterisk right here by what she just said. We're not talking about if you've been the victim of abuse and you had to get away. We're not talking about where there was unfaithfulness and that unfaithfulness was too hard to overcome. Some people are able to, or what have you, or maybe someone was a serial adulterer or other things that were just beyond the realm of what we're not trying to guilt anybody, but what we're saying is that we're, there's every way that, and you're entering in, this is it. And it's when you know that Jesus is the center, like, Dana she has blessed me in 26 years. She has made me happy. She's put a smile on my face. But I know ultimately she's not my source of true joy. Like in terms of, I have joy in her. I let me get that wrong, but Jesus is. And it's so important that I find my strength in her and in him, so that I can be a blessing to her, and the same way around. So
absolutely
go from that. But that's just, and does that help to answer the question?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and that's really what we wanted to get across to our audience, is just getting a better understanding of, God as our source when it comes to our marriage, our relationship, and really what his intent was. We should be using him. We should be using the word and what he says about each of us and what he says about marriage to guide our steps, to guide our marriage, our relationship, our family. So we really just wanted to be able to emphasize that to our listeners.
Yeah. I think even and I love going to that example, because even as they would look at the pieces, in the Old Testament, that'd be a fear, like, oh, I don't want that done to me. But in the same way, under the grace of God in Jesus, we get to look at him and we actually get empowered to love. So for example, two people living with each other day after day, you're going to lose the value sometimes in each other. You're going to forget. Here's the reality. Your ungodly nature will rise up at times. But here's the thing for me. If I at any time lack love for my wife, I don't need to look at her and base my affection for her based upon her behavior or her performance. All I need to do is to look at the Lord and look and concentrate. Lord, how much do you love me? How much is what you did on the cross for me and raised for me? And so as I focus on his love for me, the Bible says that we're able to love, or we love because he first loved us. And so now as I gaze at him, I get strength to love her. And for that matter, anybody else. I don't need to base how I interact with you upon your performance. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Or if she said something that, she said something about me, maybe she made a joke about something or got sarcastic, whatever the case. We say harmful things to each other sometimes, right?
No, not at all.
No. We don't do it. You don't do as much, hopefully, as you get older. But my whole point being, I gaze back upon. This is what it means. I gaze back upon him to make sure that I have the love for you, and that God does not relate to me based upon my performance or my behavior. Therefore, I cannot relate to my wife based upon her performance or her behavior when I have him.
Amen.
To be strength.
And this is why our marriage is not just a covenant between he and I, but it's a covenant with God. God is in our marriage. The moment we said, yes, God had entered into that covenant with us. So when one is weak, I don't need him to be strong in every area, because my God is in my marriage. My God is in my home. So therefore, I can receive strength even in our times of weakness because he's here.
Yeah. And then you get, it's again, for so many things, even beyond, because as you're married, we're married 26 years now. I'm sure there's people listening who've been married longer or shorter, or maybe someone's listening and their relationship ended because of trauma or tragedy. We've had some really, really traumatic things that we've walked through with our kids, with health issues. We've had my dad living with us for 8 years, and all the challenges that came with that. And I'm just summing that up, and there's stuff there. But there were times literally where there wasn't a break. If we weren't having to pick our kids up from school because of dealing with being broken down to tears and stress, and our son having a chronic pain issue, or our daughter dealing with some pretty significant issues. It was literally every time we'd walk into the office and then come home, and my dad wanted to take all of the attention. And we had things, pastoring a church. We were literally, I'm trying to think of fatigue and having nothing left, and then to turn to be able to love each other and encourage each other. Yeah. And then the next day, it's starting all over again, and you're praying, but you're not seeing the answers to your prayers, maybe that you want in your timing, to be able to, that's what I'm talking about. Like in moments like that, this is not the stuff that you think about when you say, I do.
Right.
So life has a way of humbling you. Life has a way of bringing things to you. And if you want to be anchored, if you want to be able to overcome the things, you really have to be in pursuit of that man who died on that hill, who rose from that grave, whose spirit now lives inside of you, and nurturing that. God is not a decoration on our marriage. He is the very essence of it. And that's what we seek to strive in pursuit of him as followers of Christ.
Man, absolutely.
This is just, it's so good because this is information that we've learned along the way, you know, from having conversations with you guys and just other people that have poured into us. We've been able to learn this aspect of marriage. So it's helped us in our relationship, in our marriage. But I feel like early on, as you know, as we were growing up, I'm going to say that, and I don't want to make it seem, you know, in a bad way, but the church for us kind of did us a disservice because it was like you're in a relationship, you don't have sex until you're married, and then you get married, and that's the end of the conversation. There was never anything told to us growing up that explained marriage like this, you know, and it was a struggle, you know, early on because of that.
Absolutely. I mean, it for me, I felt the condemnation of that statement. You can't do anything until you're married. You know, if you do, this is going to happen. But like you said, there was never a real explanation of what the expectations are when you do get married and what is your foundation. I mean, we know that, you know, in the Bible it says to get married, right? And then be fruitful and multiply. But what does that mean? You know, and okay, we're married.
Another podcast. That's a whole other
exactly. And we have one coming up. So stay tuned. Make sure you all tune into that one too.
But there's a saying that the devil tries to do everything before you're married to get you into bed. And once you're married, he does everything to get you out. Yes.
So true.
Yeah. So that we understand where you're coming from with some of those perspectives is that, you know, it's even interesting. Sometimes you have to counsel, maybe it's a woman who has grown up in such a type of church environment where she's so scared about sex that she enters into this marriage and sees it as something that's not to be, you know, not to be looked at in a beautiful way, but to be frowned upon. And it's like, okay, this thing that I've been telling you, you cannot do. It's sin. It's sin. It's sin. Okay, now it's blood. Like, wait, what? So it truly is. That's why we tell our children, we have told, you know, if they're now 19 and 22, that, you know, sex is beautiful, that it has been given to us by God. And we make sure that they understand the importance of sex within a marriage. And I mean, I'll never forget. I'm sorry, we don't want to take too much time.
Good. No, I'm wondering where this is all going. This is good.
I will never forget.
I got my popcorn.
I think my son was about 7 years old, and it was this, my daughter and I in the car, and he says, Mom, I have a question for you. Yeah, honey. He's in the back seat. So I hear the question, how many times have you and Dad had sex? And then I'm like, and he's like, never mind. I know the answer. And I was like, oh, you do you? And he said, yes, one time because I'm here. And then he's like, oh, wait a minute. 2 times because of my sister. And I'm like, honey, no, like I literally had to tell him in that moment, you know, someone might not agree with me. But I told him, you know, that is a gift from God. And so that it has been definitely more than 2 times.
I would hope so in 26 years. Okay.
Praise the Lord, everybody.
So let's hang out right there for a second. So, you gave a couple of practical examples of how we as the church individually can prepare like our children. And you talked about like premarital discipleship. So how can we as the church, but also the church as an institution, what are some practical ways or steps that can be taken to move away from that, I guess, fear-based model that I described? About marriage and the joys, challenges, and the purpose of marriage into helping people understand the true biblical model and what God intended. What are the steps that you feel like we could, as a church and as individuals, take to move closer to that?
Yeah, I think number one, I think what your question and what you're talking about, it's the fruit that comes from seeds that are sown. And what I mean by that is that you have a church culture we try and create where it's about the pursuit of Jesus. And just as he who is divine became flesh, that we could take something as biblical and as beautiful as marriage, but also put boots on it, so to speak, and talk about, in light of Jesus, what does this look like and how we engage with each other, and so if we have a culture of discipleship that says we love God, and this is what it means to love God. Let's walk through as we look at him and behold him. Here's what it means to love, forgive, and so forth. And then we also translate that into discipleship. And so we've been developing over at the church and working with, of course, you guys will know, our SYMBA, Save Your Marriage Before It Starts, which is actually the book, Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts, that Pastor Dana and I went through back in 1995, starting in 1995.
Wow.
Yeah, and it became a whole course, and people can get certified in it. But it really does help you walk through some of those practical things, talking about money and budget, talking about, hey, what are your expectations? How has marriage been defined for you? Because we're such a diverse society, meaning we have, more so than ever before, we have so many people from so many different backgrounds and nations all living in one spot. So, for example, someone from Africa marrying someone from the United States, and you have two completely different cultures based upon, depending on where they're from. Right. When you have a Western worldview, and then you have a non-Western world, there's stuff like that, or people from Europe, with folks from, I don't know, Canada, something. Yeah, I'm just giving hypothetical examples. Yeah. But the whole point is that culture impacts, and the culture that we're raised in, and we all have to learn how to say the culture that I was raised in, let's just say, is great, but at the end of the day, that culture takes a back seat to what the Lord asks of us. Yeah. And what God asks of us is above the culture, the way that we think. And there are times that what he says I have to yield to, and that I don't have the right point of view on something.
So there's a culture that we have to choose to create. Mm-hmm. And that's what we esteem to do in our home, is create a culture where our family can be open and have real good discussion about these things, and not feel ashamed or scared to talk about these things. But it is a culture. It isn't like, okay, I haven't talked about it all this time, and now she's 15 years old and I want to have a conversation with her. Right. And I think that's a lot of what our generation went through is, okay, we're not going to be talking about it until maybe high school, we'll talk about it. Mm-hmm. Oh, Mom, I learned that a long time ago. Right. So we have to have these conversations earlier than we ever expected. Mm-hmm. And to help them understand that this is beautiful. And that's why we, even from the earliest of time, we did not hide our affection for one another in front of our kids. We flirted with one another in front of the kids. We would kiss one another in front of the kids. We would passionately hug. And we had boundaries, but
right. I'm sure your kids were glad about that.
Yes, they were.
When Autumn was younger, she would go, healthy marriage. She was like 7 or 8 saying that.
I mean, how cool is that? Like, that she knew to call it a healthy marriage based on what she saw. And that's the other piece of it. The answering the question is, what are people seeing? And that's why it's important that we, if we don't see what we know society needs to see, then we have to be the ones to make the change and be that example and show what a good, healthy marriage looks like. I know that when we were younger, we would do whatever we could, especially my husband, as he was really considering that he wanted to be the husband that God wanted him to be, that he would place himself around, even as a college student, around families that were, had been together for a little period of time or a longer period of time, that were doing marriage and family well. So I think if you have listeners that don't have good examples around them to really fight to find those examples and spend time with them, be intentional and spend time with them, and also let your kids see what healthy marriage looks like. And so
a lot of that is to your point, Pastor Dana, is finding people I just found people that I loved and respected, especially being in church life. I liked who they were when they were not at church. There wasn't a change. There wasn't.
Yeah.
So, and the way they did life and the way they did things, I had great examples from my home, things that I saw in qualities, but I know I needed, more to take an inventory. And that didn't mean that I was perfect when I started. I still had, a lot of things that we've shared with you have been just because of we love God. And as we walk along in those early years, and they were really rough for us too, because, everyone has their own personal expectations of what they think their spouse is going to do. And then their spouse breaks all those expectations because you never articulated them. And they're really your own personal 10 commandments. Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then, thou shalt make the bed as soon as they get up in the morning, and I can't believe you didn't, you're vile, worthy of death and destruction. But like, working through all that stuff, but if you keep your eyes on the Lord, that's helped us to grow. So it wasn't like we started this way, but it's just like, that's why we say, if there's a sincerity to say, God, I'm willing, I'm going to follow you through, and you go through all those growth pangs. But I think the larger part of the question you ask is also creating a church environment where marriage is and honored and esteemed and it's, it's right way, healthy, that you have couples that, that want to engage with others and know that they're, living out their faith and living out a marriage, is important. And it becomes in so many ways a model to others to encourage them. So I hope that answers your question. That was
absolutely. Yeah. And I just want to say thank you to you all, and as well to Apostle Dave and Pastor Nancy, just for the environment that you steward in our church, in Word of Life Christian Center, the opportunities that we have to see exactly what you're saying, see marriage done well, and in the small groups, allowing us the opportunity to really connect and fellowship with other couples, and not just in marriage. There's opportunities with our kids, with whatever hobby you're interested in, just the opportunities to connect and really have a good understanding of the fact that we are not meant to live life alone,
Correct.
Not just in marriage, but, in fellowship with other people as individuals.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate that from you all, and the fact that you really emphasize that in our church family.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And you guys play a key role in that.
Yeah, too. I loved it.
We're definitely a team.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So this was all like really, it was some deep things there. Like it was awesome.
We got so deep in there. It was good. It was much needed.
It was so good. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna end on a more lighter note, like we normally do with our guests. And we asked
one more whammy. I was ready.
Yeah. we asked, what was your favorite date night? Each of you, your favorite date night or experience. It could be a trip or anything like that. But to give our listeners maybe some ideas that could help them spice up what they got going on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tell them spicy.
Wow.
Spicy, man.
So our favorite. Oh, I know.
Go ahead.
Wow.
Go
no.
ahead.
I know for me, I know like when I think of, but this is on the married side of things, right?
This is almost like, I feel like playing this game that, what was your spouse's favorite? And I pick it up and I wrote what I thought his answer would be. So
right.
I have it in my mind.
So do I have it in my mind too.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, go.
I'm going to say, though there's been many wonderful, wonderful moments with my wife, but I would say as far as date night or is it just date night or experience?
Nope. It could be a trip. It could be an experience. Anything.
All right. It's going to be that this is the first time we did something like this. It was 2019 and it was our trip to Montego Bay Sandals.
Ding, 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 ding.
She knew it. She knew it.
And you won.
Oh, such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. That was, it came, it was a great time. And
I mean, it's not that you can do this all the time, but it was the fact that we were able to go away and not have to think about how we can meet the kids' needs or meet anyone else's needs, but just one another's needs. And so stepping away from everyone and it only took, how many nights were we there? 4?
4 nights, 5 days.
4 nights, 5 days. To me, that I told my husband, like, I could have been fine with 3, literally, because it was so, he wanted 4.
He's like, nope.
He's like, no, we can't do any less. But I literally was so fulfilled.
A lot of meeting of needs.
I seriously, right now. I was seriously fulfilled, like in my heart. You know how they talk about the love tank? My love tank was overflowing by like probably day 2, day 3. And I'm like, okay, I am totally fulfilled and overflowing. Yeah. But it really was because we were focused on each other and not trying to please anyone else. And you know how if you're on vacation with family, they all have their ideas and what they want to do. Right. But yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So now I know that's on the more like that was an expensive thing that we did. We went into it. But I mean, other times, just one of her favorite things is to go down to the beach. Just a simple trip down to the beach, even when it's not summer. I find that we've done that a time or two, and you've enjoyed that. So there are little things that you can do.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we emphasize. It's like, you know, every once in a while you have to treat yourselves, you know, and it comes with prioritizing your marriage. You know, sometimes we spend big money on family trips and things for the kids and all that. And, you know, we do the least to really take that quality time and invest in our marriage by doing things like that, getting away, taking a trip. But it also doesn't always have to be like that, you know.
Just
you don't
plug in, you know, could just really spice up and make it so intimate. So
you don't have to spend a lot of money. Just keep it a priority, right?
But if you can get to the Montego Bay sandals,
yes,
5 stars.
So here's a funny thing. When we were at the Montego Bay sandals, and if you're at one of the sandals, they let you go to all the other sandals in the area free of charge. Well, we thought we were going to this one where you go out to this reef, but I think we went to the very first sandals that was in the area. It was run down.
It was gated up like
it was.
We're not in the best part of town right now.
And it was 45 minutes until the next bus. And so we said, well, let's walk out in front of the sandals. And we walked out there, and I thought, this probably isn't a good idea.
I mean, literally.
Yeah. So literally within a couple minutes, we were offered the best weed on the island. Yeah. Yeah.
He said, I'm the weed mom.
Yeah. And I was like, and I love the Jesus man. He's like, oh, no. So, yeah. And we saw others begin to make their way towards us. We're like, yeah, it's a wrap. Okay. So
right. Time to go.
And then where I forget what the place was, but another time was going to the Poconos for a short time. And it was one of those places that, you know, has the champagne cup.
That was our favorite spot for a while.
We had a good time. I haven't been for a long time, so I cannot say anything about it.
It's a little outdated now, but it was
like I think we might have had a round bed. But
2001.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe a bed on the platform.
Yep.
But one of our funniest moments was we had a heart-shaped hot tub, and it had a jacuzzi, you know, with the bubbles and everything. And so I thought, well, this is a giant tub. It must need a whole lot of bubble baths. So I think I put about half. I didn't know. Obviously, I didn't take many bubble baths. So I think I put about half of the liquid in, and that thing was overflowing so much. I had to scoop.
Remember those volcano experiments you would do?
It gets a little out of hand.
Let's put that to shame.
I was concerned we might get charged for the bubbles.
Well, you live and you learn. Next time you know.
An interesting 45 minutes of moving suds from one part of the room all the way over.
So anyway, just I think those have been memorable and very just so good for our marriage. So like you said, taking time to just step away from everything and everyone and just focus on one another.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank you guys for your time. This was, man, I think more than what we expected. This was
absolutely
really, we think going to be impactful for our listeners. And if anyone is looking for a church home, if you are in the Delaware tri-state area, Word of Life Christian Center. The website is wolcc.org. So you can learn more about our services, the ministry. Even if you're not local, you can watch virtually through the Word of Life Delaware app. You can watch on Facebook, YouTube, all of that. So Get plugged in.
And just to know, we did a recent message on the 4 C's of communication within marriage.
Yes.
So if somebody's listening, they thought, hey, I'd like to hear a little bit more. That's something that we have available. That was pretty within the last couple of weeks.
Absolutely. It was great too.
Just a spoiler. I think someone gets slapped with a fish. I don't know. But it was
our services.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, please go tune into that one. So,
well, we thank you guys so much. It's been such a joy, and we look forward to your next podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your heart with everyone. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, give it up for Pastor Dana and Chris Rue. Woo, woo, woo. Yeah. So with that, ladies and gents, until next time, stay encouraged and continue to invest in each other for a marriage that lasts a lifetime. Have a great day.
See you later.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe and share. Keep up with us on social media at Millennium Marriage and visit our website at millenniummarriage.com.